Our external world is quite simply a manifestation of what's going on inside, and what's going on inside is often created by how we physically feel within our body, what we're eating, whether we're treating ourselves well. So if you turn up and you're holding the world lightly, 99% of it is skirmishes. If you're turning up fragile, 95% of it is battle.
Welcome to another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Piers Fallowfield-Cooper. He's the author of this book, Are You Still the Future?, which I've read almost all of, which was a Business Book Awards finalist. Piers is a veteran of 20 years plus as a coach, facilitator, mentor to senior executive. He himself was very senior in the business world, held the role of CEO, MD, chairman, president in the world of finance, fintech, e-publishing. So it's a great honor, Piers, to have you on the show. A very warm welcome to Being Human.
That's lovely, Richard. I'm momentarily embarrassed because I think when people speak, others speak about ourselves, I think we're not used to those accolades. And a big shout out and thank you for waving the book around. It saves me doing it, which is slightly embarrassing with desperate authors with their books, but delighted to be here.
Brilliant. Yes. So I love to start at the beginning, Piers, with my guests to give people a sense of where you're coming from. So tell us a little bit about little Piers growing up, and some of the experience that shaped you.
Well, that's an interesting way to start, isn't it? So I guess I was a bouncing baby like all those other little bouncing babies fed on cow and gate, you know? And interestingly, there's a concept which is about how children, and this ties right in. Let me just add for your listeners and viewers, I'm moderately dyslexic. So as we spoke just before we started, my thought patterns can be very different, sometimes beneficial, sometimes not. So do feel free to rescue me if we end up in the, 2 fields away from where we wanted to be. So there's a concept, and I remember it. There's a concept in children that it's pretty much before the verbal stage, the fully verbal, not just the noise making, but that they have a sense of wonder and just pure delight in the world. I think there's been a fair amount of research about it, but it's a non-linguistic interpreted. It's not I hear it, it goes through, it's processed, I regurgitate it. It's simple. I jump into a puddle, I jump out of a puddle, and things are. And so I remember bits of that. And I remember being very, very happy. I mean, incredibly happy as a child. And I remember living in a very odd sort of house. We lived in a 4-story Victorian house that, as Thomas Love Peacock would have described, was in a picturesque state of semi-dilapidation. So my father had come from a fairly wealthy family, but somehow had never managed to get any of the money. So we kind of had what I call now champagne tastes on beer money. So my first full sentence as a child was, me write small check, because my parents were always, oh, do you have a small check for the baker? Oh, do you have a small check for the milkman? Do you have a small check? So my first full sentence was, me write small check. So part of it was a bit idyllic, but part of it was challenging. And probably I didn't realize till afterwards how challenging part of it was. Because for all sorts of apparently good reasons, and my parents decided that it would be good, because they were both pursuing careers, that, and since also I'd fell out with every childminder, nursery school or whatever I'd been offered by refusing to go back the following day. I'm not going there. So some of it was self-inflicted, that I should go and spend time with my grandmother. And my gran was lovely, and it was in mid-Wales, and it was at any of your readers who've read Cider with Rosie, it was a kind of Cider with Rosie upbringing of, there was a canal and a railway and beautiful fields of elderflowers and things. So at one level, it was idyllic. At another, of course, it was a mild, really, abandonment. It wasn't, but I remember as a child feeling very, very alone. I remember when things changed and I came back, my parents came all the time. My mum taught, so school holidays and things, she'd always come or I'd come back. So it wasn't like you were there, cast in another kingdom. But of course, as a 5-year-old, you do feel like that. Yeah. So I do remember coming back. I remember feeling incredibly happy. It was a Sunday night, and Sunday night was bath night. And so bath night, I remember on the radio there was Sing Something Simple on the radio. Sing Something Simple. I remember feeling so happy to be back within my mum ironing quiet as I'm in the bath. I was just thrilled to be back in the bosom of my family. What it did do, of course, was set up a great fear of abandonment. So by nature, I'm not clingy. I'm not attached. But in personal relationships, I noticed that I was clingy and was attached and was very concerned that everything was all right. Over time, you kind of work it through, but it was certainly a very big shaping experience.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm curious, you said you worked it through. How did that unfold? When did you come to that realization that was something you experienced?
It was certainly deep in the psyche, but like most of these things, I think humans are remarkably good at burying their howling wolves. We put them in great big boxes and we hide them in the ground. Unfortunately, ultimately, the boxes tend to rust, and then the howling things come out. So, probably late 20s, I started to notice the pattern, and I thought a lot about it, and I think I just became conscious of it. And I think once you become conscious of many things, the fear of them go away a lot. You show them the daylight, and you talk to people about it, and you're able to say it. I think they tend to lose their hold over you.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So this didn't emerge for you in therapy or through a coach or anyone. This is something you just managed to sort of surface through your own inquiry, which is impressive.
I surfaced through my own inquiry. For many years, I had an absolutely wonderful mentor, and I brought it up with him because he was a trained psychologist and cognitive scientist, and he was a marvelous mentor to me, both personally and professionally. One of the things I used him for was when working with my clients, so a kind of supervision. But it's curious. Each time you tell it, it becomes less sticky.
Yeah,
it's just less sticky.
Yeah,
well, it's very interesting, Rich. If I may say, that was a very curious question to start with, very good question to start with, but also I would never have imagined I would have answered it to a world out there in that way. So it's very curious.
It's good. Well, thank you for sharing. I think the more we share this and we're open, as part of the purpose of the podcast is to almost give people permission to share what's there for them and what they're working on, and because we all have stuff. And so, to create a world where it's more acceptable to share. whatever's there I think is good.
Mhm.
Mm. So you found a way to work through this initially by yourself, and then, as you say, with a mentor as that came up later in your 20s. So that was the early period, and you mentioned the abandonment. And as I understand it, then you had quite an horrific incident when you were 10.
You've read the book. You're very good. This is excellent. You didn't just wave it at me. You read it. I'm very impressed. Yes. And please, anybody who's listening, if it sounds like I'm coming across very casual, it has the space of distance, which also removes the great stickiness of these things, and I tend to view everything that happens as an experience. Something to be savored, to be understood, to be experienced, to learn from. They're just experiences, because it's how we behave and react to them is the real impact, not the thing itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry to, well, I can't help but jumping in. So, and is that aligned? So you have a strong interest in Buddhism, or is that part of?
Well, I always claimed I was a Buddhist because I quite liked it. A good friend of mine said that I had such good chutzpah, I could be an honorary Jewish. But I always was convinced, not particularly on the reincarnation, but as a way of being, Buddhism. Yes, but I was told by a colleague who said, you're no Buddhist, you're just a yuppie with a conscience. But I would like to think that I have a connection, because the lighter we hold things, you see, but what Buddhism really teaches us is about, Buddhism teaches us about detachment. But detachment doesn't mean you have to go and sit in the other room. Detachment just means you have to get a piece of tissue paper between you and it, so you're not sticky to it. This is what Buddhism is really talking about, that you're not sticky to it, and that these are just literally, they're bubbles, they're things, I have never, sorry, here we go, we're off. I have never.
I've always had a fascination with Buddhism, so I'm all ears.
I've never in my entire life experienced anything in real life that was worse than that which was imagined. Yep, never. I think, as Marcus Aurelius said, there's nothing that thinking makes it so, or something. That it's the thinking and the mind stuff that plays the tricks.
Yeah,
because life actually is an embodied experience. It's not in the head. Fritz Perls, this a kind of one of the inventors of modern self-help. Isn't it wonderful? I don't even think it's called self-help in the bookshops now, is it? It's called personal psychology or something. But, who was the first in the self-help section said, if you want to help somebody, get them out of their head and into their body.
Right.
And often if you're working with a client who's too much in the head, you have to go and get them doing something like salsa dancing. Don't send them to yoga because it's too passive, because all they do is lie there and go in their head. But something like salsa dancing or Alexander technique, where it's permanent adjustment, or where it's got to be very active, because then they're in the body and they get out their head. And if you can get them to that, they realize how wonderful it is, and they start to go into the body more. So yeah, when I was, when I was 10, it was 10, because it was coming to my 11th birthday. I had blocked adenoids, and a lovely lady doctor who actually was a family friend saw me as a patient, and wanted to treat them because they were blocked and infected. And at the time, there were a lot of penicillin allergies. It was just one of those waves where people were not terrible, but they were coming out strawberry blotches and things, with penicillin. So she decided she would give me a different antibiotic, which was an antibiotic, a brand name Duronate, but of the sulfonamide drug group, which isn't much used now, and was it wasn't the first prescribed drug. The plus was it was highly effective, and the other plus was that generally it was well tolerated. And the cases which weren't tolerated were literally 1 in a million. Unfortunately, I was one of the 1 in a million. So started taking this around my sister's birthday, which is mid-December. And then a little bit later, but probably about the 20th of December, leading up to Christmas. And then between Christmas and New Year, I started developing a fever. And then things started to get serious. And didn't know what was happening. So I went into hospital. I had something called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Stevens-Johnson syndrome is when the body reacts in a terribly allergic way to a drug or a substance. And so the impact is that it's rather like having a very serious burn. So over 90% of my skin peeled off. All my fingernails and toenails dropped out, all my hair, all the mucous surfaces were very badly damaged. And it actually became, Shakespeare's always really good about this balance between tragedy and comedy. They're a very, very fine line. Where another bit of, shape of a foot would drop off because it was just dead skin. And you're left then with just the very, very single layer, which is why even today I've got just baby skin because it's, the other stuff didn't come back. And on one day, let's put it this way, it wasn't going so well. And
British.
Yes, it wasn't going so well. And Mum, who had spent tons of time just sitting in the room with me in the corner, I remember on one particular day, I felt that I was floating above the bed. And I felt I was in a tube, which is how I always remembered it. But I suspect it was more cocooned, although I didn't feel the ends. It was a very contained all around kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I felt above the bed, and I felt looking down and looking around. And I didn't really think that much of it. And years later, I was chatting with Mum, and I said, oh, yes, I remember that day. She said, you kind of left the room. She said, and I talked to you, and I said, she said, where are you? And I said, oh, I'm outside the hospital. And she said, bless her, thank goodness she asked, do you want to come back? I said, yes, please. And literally, she talked me all the way back in through the avenue of trees, back down the path and into the room. And afterwards, the part that I didn't know was that was the day that they pretty much thought I'd gone. Wow. that was the day, you know what, we don't think we can save him. So it's very interesting. But the double whammy of this is that I didn't know how bad this was. So this was beginning of January when I was like this, and it was an early Easter, one of those early ones. And I announced firmly that I was going to be home for Easter. I'm going to be home for Easter. Unfortunately, nobody told me that was not possible. Unfortunately, I didn't know it was not possible. And so for the kind of case and the kind of severity, and mine was one of the most severe cases ever on record, and I should have been there at least 6 months, and I should be in a mess now. I got home for Easter. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know all that stuff at the time. I know the different components now. So this is how you can understand where, there's 10 miners in a cave, and the foreman is the one who's marking the days, but is lying to the others about, no, we've just done one day. We're on day 3 or something, and in the end, when they come out, he dies, but they all survive because they didn't know, and that's how they did it. So this whole mind-body experience and this conscious and unconscious, I've always been fascinated with, which is one of the reasons I ended up coaching, mentoring, and facilitating.
Yeah, what an extraordinary story. So 2 questions come to mind. First one, was your mum speaking to you, in the room? You were talking in your body, or she sort of joined you?
So I was not in any way conscious of that conversation. My total memory is just feeling floating above the bed in a cocoon.
Right.
Very, very warm. Very, very warm.
But as your mother recalls it, it's you. Although you were out there and you can't recollect it, any of it, you were talking, from your body. It was an embodied experience of you talking to your mother. It wasn't your mother sort of met you out there, so to speak.
Richard, actually, the mechanics of it, I don't know.
Right.
Because what I do know is what I do have absolute crystal memory of this cocoon, this sudden warmth and peace and quiet, and feeling above and looking down and pain-free, above and looking down and pain-free.
Yeah.
The rest of it, I don't know. My suspicion is I was on the way.
Yeah, fascinating. Wow, what a story. And I've got a particular interest. I don't know if you're familiar with this phenomenon of the telepathy tapes. Are you aware of that?
Tell me. I may be, but not the.
So it's a podcast that's become extremely popular, but it's inquiring into the claim that some non-verbal autistic individuals have strong telepathy capabilities and are able to communicate.
I would think that's quite likely because I know that the Bushmen of the Kalahari have an incredible ability to know when the kill takes place. The people back at camp, when the kill has taken place, know when they're heading home, and when asked about it, they talk about the telegraph in the heart of this kind of sense of knowing. And people who, and autism is a scale thing, but people who have a slight or moderate autism usually have incredibly finely honed skills in some other area.
Right.
They're usually exceptionally good at something else. So I can understand that the less paying attention to all the noise would encourage knowing. You see, I'm very, very intuitive and moderately dyslexic, which means that ultimately I'm a kind of systemic thinker because I get the stuff that's in the system, because for years I've had to fill in the missing bits. You know,
Right.
if you don't know what that word means or that letter looks funny, you have to kind of work out the whole thing. So I'm quite good at just knowing things. So often with a client, I just know things, but then I have to be very careful. I have to loop back and get empirical evidence that what I've just picked up has some relevance and is not just me making stuff up.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating. Yes. The other question I had, so you had this goal to be out by Easter.
No, it wasn't a goal.
Okay, that was where I was going. So, okay, good.
It was a simple fact.
Okay.
This is nothing. No, I was going to be home by Easter. Statement of fact.
Okay. So how does that square with your statement later in the book that I have completely abandoned goal setting with my clients? So let's segue into that because I'm fascinated by that.
No. There is a duality here. So on that, that was a simple, single-minded purpose.
Right.
That's the one thing that had to be achieved. And it didn't have that level of thought to it. I'm going to be home by Easter. Boom.
Yeah.
End of it. And everything lined up behind it to make that possible.
Yeah.
Now, why I'm not a fan of goal setting is the challenge of goal setting is you get your goals. Now, for all these people who are about to tune out thinking, okay, so who is this nutter you're interviewing this week? So, the challenge with goal setting is that we do the goal setting from here. So the maximum potential knowledge, understanding, vision, anything is from here. So I'm a huge fan of getting the directionality right and then dealing with what comes up and making adjustments. So humans by nature are teleological. So they do like to head towards a distant point. But broaden that a bit. Sure, you can have some markers, but really head in the right direction because things will come up on the way that will change, make small adjustments, and you'll get what you really want. Am I making you say? Oh,
No, I get. It makes complete.
So here's an example. Let's say that we're looking after our children, our nephews, our nieces, our godchildren, or our cousins, or whatever. They want to go to the zoo. So let's do zoo goal setting, right? We write down, we want to see the lions, the tigers, the elephants. We go there, we see the lions, the tigers, the elephants. We're very happy, we're very smug, and we come home. Unfortunately, we missed the 4 giant mating pandas who were only there for the afternoon once in the entire human history of the Western world. So let's set some directionality. We want to see some interest. We want to have a great day out and see some interesting animals. So we turn up and we find the zookeeper. Good morning, Mr. Zookeeper. I have 2 young David Attenborough wannabes here. What should they be doing? Well, what a wonderful day for you to come. We today have 4 giant pandas, only for the afternoon. They're up in the top field. You're early. If you go up now, you'll be able to watch them being fed bamboo. That's the difference between directionality and goal setting.
Got it. But I can imagine the pushback on that, though. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to be 5 million in revenue inside 12 months, and that's the goal, and you say, well, actually, you'd be better off telling yourself, I want a successful business and I want to do interesting things and have impact. I can imagine some resistance to that with an
Of course. So why do you want 5 million? What's this 5 million marker for?
Because that will tell me, I'm successful, and that will allow me to hire people, and I know I'll have, by definition, if I'm at that size, I'll be having a bigger impact, and I'll know I've grown, and I'll have something substantial in the world that's likely to continue.
Okay. Does it work for you?
Well, this is hypothetical. Yes.
Yeah, hypothetically, does it work?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay then. Well, give it a go. I honestly, I would not try and, if someone is absolutely committed because they have a strong driver around achievement or something like that, I'd try and pad it out a bit. So I'd let them have the markers, but I'd give you an example. So the company that turned into ARM, the chip maker, the chip non-maker, they just had a kind of vision. Theirs was MIPS for the masses.
Right.
They wanted to produce cheap stuff. They basically want produce computing power, lots of it, as cheap as possible, so everyone could have it. That was their kind of guiding principle. Now, through that, they very cleverly ended up being a designer of chips rather than a chip manufacturer. They built such trusted relationships that they work with so many competitors who are perfectly willing to work with ARM because they know their IP, their thinking is safe. And in the process, they've ended up as a business worth what? $150 billion? They didn't have a 5 million by Christmas goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not dogmatic about it, but you're advocating for the benefits of having directionality.
So congratulations on your, I'm getting a bit spiky now. So congratulations on your 5 million revenue. Could it have been 10?
I guess it could have been, possibly.
Yeah. So yes, of course, and put targets and markers and success things. I think it would be more exciting to have also added in there, do you just want to do this on your own as a business? Do you want to have different relationships where you're doing things with other people? Does 5 million revenue by Christmas stop you having 10 by Easter because you ruled out sharing some of the wealth on the journey, maybe with partnerships, with joint ventures, with things? I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're going. It makes sense to me. It also makes sense to me from my understanding of, well, you sort of touched on it, but complexity theory and the idea of complex systems, and the in some senses the futility of hard goal setting in that context.
Head in the right direction. So, personally, I don't do goal setting, and I don't actively encourage, because I'm more interested with my clients in how they turn up. Because how they turn up is a better predictor of success than a list of goals.
Right.
So the changes I'm looking for are, so whenever I work with a client, first thing, basically I want to work with what's working. But are there any fatal flaws that's going to trip this leader up? Do they interrupt everybody? Are they perceived? They think they're just being a bit tough, but are they perceived as a bully? Are there any of these things that are fatal flaws? Of course, you have to deal with them. Then after that, what's working? What energizes them? When are they most successful? So once you start having that kind of philosophy, then the first thing I look for is, do they start turning up better with me? Yeah, because if they're turning up better with me, I know sometimes they're turning up better in their other meetings, in their other things.
Right.
And hopefully they're turning up like that all the time with me, which I know then it's most likely they're turning up very well. So if you're turning up well and you're doing that with directionality, yeah. So you've got an alignment, for simplistic terms, let's talk mind, body, spirit. We're aligned. We're in good physical shape. We're looking after ourselves. So we're turning out well. We're bringing our humanity with us. And we've got a good directionality where we're going. I would honestly maintain that I believe that person's results will be bigger, more successful, more lasting, more fulfilling than I want to do 5 million by Christmas.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm taking it to the extremes, but I'm really, really, really keen on this.
Yeah. You mentioned systems in the book. What role does that play, having systems?
So I think of systems in two ways, two sets of systems. Our internal systems and the systems in the external. And you have to read the signals in the system. Okay? Now, for some people, that will be easy. For others, it's a more easy, unconscious, they just do. So our headquarters was Chicago, where my chairman sat. I'm often remarkably bad about reading the system, signals in the system, about sort of obvious things. Someone at work announces they're getting married to someone. Oh, I didn't even know they'd been out together. I completely missed that. But I would pick up a change in the voice, a little subtlety in a conversation, and know that everything strategically has just changed. We're all making the right noises, but no, that's gone. So you want to start doing two things. You want to start paying attention to when you get it right. Yep. So when your intuition, your whatever you want to call it, is telling you something and you were right, pay attention. Also pay attention when it told you, oh, I don't really think we should hire him, and you overrode that because the CV was good and everybody else on the panel liked him or her and hired them. So pay attention to when you listen to it, and the challenge is the feedback loops are very delayed. So if when we followed I'm going to use the shorthand intuition, it's actually reading all the signals in the system, but we'll call it for shorthand intuition. When you get it right, you don't usually get a positive feedback loop quickly. When you get it wrong, you get an immediate feedback loop. And normally we incorporate the stuff that gives us a sweetie, right?
Yeah.
It's I did that, it worked,
Yeah.
So I remember this one example. I've got one, because often if we do follow it, let's go left, I've got a feeling, and you miss the traffic jam on the right, so you don't have any feedback loop that tells you you've made the good decision. Yeah. So I remember I was trying to work and coming up to the roundabout, I was in the wrong lane for some reason, because I'm always in the right lane, a little bit of dual carriageway to go right round the roundabout. So I thought, maybe I should go across the next junction, then go up that way. No, I override all this. So that I force my way into the other, to go around here, boomf, half an hour in traffic. So just pay attention to it. Just pay attention to it. Because if you don't, it'll trip you up. And if you do, you'll start to get a competitive advantage. So that there's three actually. There's three incredible pluses for people who want to be more successful and have a better career. Number one, get good at reading the signals in the system. Number two, be adaptable. Be really, 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 really adaptable. The most flexible person or the most flexible plant or most flexible animal will take over the system. Yeah. And number three, be likable. If you're in sales or anything like that, if your product is very similar to somebody else as a competitor, they'll buy from the person they like. Just be pleasant and likable. Huh?
Yeah.
This is not over difficult.
Yeah. No, that completely makes sense.
But the flexibility, I want to just go back on this. So Darwin is quoted accurately but misquoted in understanding. So Darwin has always spoken about survival of the fittest. His description of fittest was most adaptable. Yeah? It wasn't the elbows, it was the adaptability, the ability to change to fit well into the environment. I was in New Zealand and we were staying in Wanaka, which is a lovely lake. And in the middle of the lake, there's a small protected reserve because New Zealand has one major problem, which is that the settlers brought their stoats and their other pets, as it were. And of course, there are no natural predators. So they're still, to this day, a major problem. But this, because they can't swim that far. Yeah. So lovely wildlife. And there's a plant. And the plant, up until about waist height, it's a sort of tree-ish bush thing. Up to about waist height, has incredible, nasty, spiky things all off. And then from about waist height up, it's a normal bush. Excuse me, what's with this? Oh, well, the predator for this bush that chews it, even when it's standing on its hind legs, could only reach up to about waist height. So, over time, it learned. But on the flexibility. So, do you have a garden?
Yes.
Do you grow roses?
Yes.
Okay. So, as a rose grower, you well know that they only like facing a particular direction. They don't like too much water, just enough but not too much. You have to spray them for green fly, for white fly, for mold. And if you're very lucky and the gods smile on you, you get a beautiful, short-lived flower.
Right.
Worth it, but yes. Compare that to the buddleia, which we see from our trains. The buddleia looks like a what's the triangular one? It looks like a lilac, but it's not. It's a buddleia. Give a buddleia 3 grains of earth and a railway bridge, it'll grow.
Yes.
Chop it down, it'll grow even stronger. Which one's going to take over the world? It's not going to be your roses.
Yes.
So flexibility is the key.
Yeah. Yes. That makes a lot of sense. And now I'm tempted to ask questions about, how do we develop each of those, our intuition, our likableness and indeed our adaptability. But I'd also love to get back to the story. So maybe let's put a pin on that because I'd love to come back to it.
We didn't warn people when we started they should bring some food with them for this interview, food and drink.
No, I love the tangents. So we talked about this desire of yours, or the fact was that you were living in this fact of, I'm going to be back by Easter, and indeed you were. So what changed in you after this experience? I know you were only young.
So I became rather serious. My teenage years, I remember them, were fairly serious. I think if you talk to anybody who's had a near-death experience of some kind, number one, they tend to cherish life a lot. And the other is that, and certainly true for me, I understood that I was going to die. Most people, certainly not in their teens, 20s, unlikely. 30s maybe if they've lost someone very close. They don't know. Dying is a concept that happens to other people.
Yeah, certainly. I only just recently, and now I'm in my late 40s, experienced my first death of someone close to me.
And it's a defining moment, I suspect.
Mm.
You know, because it changes. Yeah. So I was always rather more grown up. Not that I couldn't be totally wayward, but I was rather more grown up than those, a little bit serious. I'm making up for it now, but a little more serious than those around me. And I had a slightly more strategic view of the world. So I remember standing outside the chemistry lab as a fifth former, and they had their mousy-tongued little red books and their Simon & Garfunkel LPs, vinyl for our younger listeners and viewers, under their arms. And I said, "You're wasting your time. You know, all you're doing is trying to throw rocks at the castle from outside. Get inside and change it from inside the system." So I kind of got all that stuff at a very early age, which I don't think I would have done otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And with that seriousness, you were able to progress quite quickly, right? Your first job was in the city?
So my first job, so, right, roll back. So when it's careers time, your career teacher can be anything from wonderful to useless, you know? And we hear all the stories, you know, all the way through. So because of my slight contrariness, I'd been through the university handbook. So my chosen career was, I want to go into hotel and catering. I want to be a hotel manager. That's all I ever wanted to be. And notice the word I used, be. All I wanted to be. I didn't want to this is one of the differences between the purity of children and grown-ups. Ask a child, you know, about future life, and they tell you, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. So I wanted to be a hotel manager. It's not something they do. It's something they be. It's back to this being human, this embodied experience. So that's what I wanted to do. But I thought, you know what? I'll take a look at the university handbook. So I flipped through and I found one course that was quite interesting. And I was doubly interested. One, because it was an interesting course. And two, because it was the only one in the book. So I thought, this is interesting. And it was on cybernetics. So I went down to the University of Bath for my interview. And I was asked to do some tests and things, and then some quite difficult maths tests. And the assessor said, I don't think your maths would be good enough for year 2 and year 3. I'm thinking, maths? What maths? Because I thought it was going to be a course on man's relationship with machine, how we connect, how we communicate, ultimately how what were known as GUIs, graphical user interfaces, would develop for how we tell the computer what we want. The whole kind of philosophical thing was, you know, which we're getting to now with AI, like who's going to pull the plug and how's that going to happen and what the risks were. So this was more a programming course, I think. So I was very glad not to have done it. So I went back to my original plan, which was nice set of goals here, you see. My original plan, which was to do a certificate, HND at the time, I think it was called, at Westminster Tech, which had the best hotel and catering, and then a year in Lucerne at hotel school afterwards. very nicely set up. And I had a Saturday job working in a little restaurant in my local town, Bromley. And the restaurant was bought. And it was bought out by a company called Associated Restaurants, which were backed by Associated Newspapers. And they offered me a job as an assistant manager when the store opened. So, so I thought, you know what? I'll learn on the job. I shall do this learning on the job. So it was a pizza house. So I learned how to make pizzas. I've saw the recipe. You take 28 pounds of flour and you're off. My favorite was green pepper and onion. And I did it for a year and I loved it. But what I hated was split shifts. You do lunch, then you have a few hours off in the afternoon, then you do evening. And you couldn't really do anything. It was silly. So with the arrogance of youth, I thought, I'll come back later, more senior into this, Then we won't have to do the split shifts. And I had a customer who we were chatting. I said, oh, you ought to come and talk to. And in their basement, they had a sort of a one-man Brook Street bureau who found bright young men good jobs. So I went to see him and we were chatting away. And he asked me to do some mazes. So I did the first maze and filled it all up. Very good. Second maze, really good. Third maze, getting more difficult now. Fourth maze, I could only get about a quarter of the way through. So intuitively, I went to the other side and started to work backwards. And he kind of jumped up almost like a jack-in-the-box out of his chair. Oh, you'd make a wonderful broker. Looking around surprised, and he sent me off for 2 interviews. And I went the first interview, and I quite liked it. They had a glass lift just for the brokers, and that really felt very cool. But I was in there. It was very strange. Meeting started at 11. Then there was a sterling crisis or something, and I had to rush out, and they left me with the brochure of all these stupid people with phones next to their ear. I thought, I'm not sure about this. Then they came back and offered me a drink. And I said, no, I was fine, thank you. And they came back with these giant tumblers of gin and tonic that was so full, it was just the meniscus holding it in as they brought them across. And, my mum was a Quaker, and it wasn't a strict household, but I mean, we didn't drink, and Dad would have an occasional small whiskey and water, and we'd have, a glass of wine at lunchtime, which from sort of 10 years old onwards, we'd always had our little drop. So it was never a big thing, but it was a bit of a shock. And I wasn't sure about them. And I went for the other interview, and the person who was interviewing with was the double of my old headmaster, a man called Derek Scotchbrook. And we're going through the interview, and he says, now, mental agility and the ability of arithmetic in your head is very, very important. I said, that. He said, what's your mental arithmetic like? Very good. He said, you could take away 158 from 183? I said, yes, of course. Oh, do you want me to do it now? And this sort of eyebrow went up. And I think he thought, And then he asked me a few more questions. And then he asked me, so how much would you like to be earning for this job? And I told him. And the other eyebrow went up. And he said, and I didn't recognize the sarcasm, are you sure you're not selling yourself a bit short? And I leaned earnestly across the desk and said, I may be, but I want the job. Both eyebrows went up. So, but he hired me. And so I suddenly then found myself on a broking floor in an alien world. An alien world.
No, because nobody in your family had been in the finance sector.
Nothing like us at all, no. And it was so strange. It was, so imagine a couple of hundred people on a giant floor. In front of them, very large a kind of large grid with lots of buttons and their direct telephone lines to all the banks. And then the international desk on which I sat, squawk boxes. So you'd have one phone under each ear and one on each box. So basically you'd have 4 conversations going on at the same time. But there was all this shouting and cacophony that after a time you get to learn. But there was this perpetual cry of, where's Tom next? And, I did a day of this and I went home and I said to Dad, I was out. Rubbish. He said, well, don't you think you should sort of go to the end of the week? So I said, no, all right. So, next day, it's going, where's Tom next? I'm thinking, surely someone knows where Tom is by now. But this carried on. And I got to the end of the week. I said, I'm not going back. I said, look, you got about 2 weeks since the end of the month and you got a paycheck. What do you think about doing that? So I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I did. So ultimately, I found out, I got a 10-year career out of it. Ultimately, I found out that Tom Next was the price for dollars tomorrow to the next day. So today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow. The next day is spot, which is the day that the trades are matched on and you get your money. And then, so it's Tom Next is tomorrow the next day. Spot next is spot to the next day, etc. So once I got that, but I had a great advantage because of my dyslexia. I could remember all the orders, and because of my intuition, I kind of knew which were my intuition and my dyslexia. I kind of knew which ones were the good orders,
right?
And so obviously you quoted everything for all the short days, then 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, all the rest of it. But if somebody wanted a price for like 1.5 months or tomorrow to the 27th of February, I could kind of do that with just knowing it. Oh, that'll be 6 5/8. And so it was a great gift and a skill.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Totally unsuited to it, but very good at it.
Yeah.
Totally unsuited to it. It's very interesting that I dedicated my book to my boss at the time, a man called Mike Knowles. Wonderful. Best boss. Wonderful guy. And I'd sent him a copy of the book. And I hadn't been in touch for probably about 20 years was the last time I saw him. And, and I wasn't sure where he lived, but I knew where he had lived. And I just sent a note and he was straight back. Yes. And we talked a few times. And he said, "Oh yes, you were exceptional. You were so different." He said, "You were completely different from all the rest." So in fact, it was quite miraculous. I survived as long as I did. But it was good for me because it toughened me up. And he saw talent. I was quite a dreamer then, and he saw talent in the dreamer, and he nurtured it. And I'm forever grateful. And that's kind of where I learned where a couple of the key things are, particularly earlier in your career, you want to be adaptable, to fit in and to be successful. And, the word I've used, flexibility. You have to be adoptable. You have to have somebody who wants to adopt you and be a mentor or be a sponsor or supporter. And it's back to our earlier conversation about this humanity. Just be pleasant. People respond to enthusiasm and pleasantness.
Yeah.
So I got put on what would be called now the high performance, high potential square, which meant I got invited upstairs for the sort of the board lunches, which was, very good. At that kind of age, you think you're supposed to be the one who speaks a lot, but actually you're not. You're supposed to be one who's quiet. Which I've learned that now. It took a while. But I remember once we'd gone up and they'd served borscht. They always got good food. They served borscht. And I hadn't this before. Oh, borscht, I like this. And I was sitting actually curiously next to Mr. Scotchbrook, who'd hired me. And unfortunately, I'd spilt some borscht down my front, and I covered it with my napkin, a white napkin. But of course, then there's a spot that appears. It looks like I've been shot, with a red spot. And he leans over and he says, I think you better go and get yourself sponged off. Talk about feeling about heart. You've come up, you're up in the boardroom. But my most famous and scariest, and it wasn't my fault. It was a buffet that day. And there was on a trestle table, giant trestle table. It was like a Caravaggio painting, the sort of like, hams and sides of salmon and grapes and fruit and everything. I was waiting outside because, quiches. Waiting outside. It was so exciting. And then I heard this creak, this little creak, a bit more of a creak. And then when the table legs went, this all slid off, and the girls who were the chefs came running out, and all these accusing looks. I'm outside the room. I didn't get invited back for quite a while after that one. But no.
Wow. And so you learn the power of adaptability, adoptability, being adopted by somebody, and this echoes earlier what you said about flexibility. This I think is a question that comes up in terms of being flexible. There's a quote in your book from Warren Bennis: "Becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It is precisely that simple and also that difficult." So, what is the relationship between being authentic and being flexible?
Skirmishes and battles. Be willing to lose every single skirmish and stand firm on the battles.
Right.
And be smart enough to work out what's a skirmish and what's a battle.
Right.
Yep. In business as in life, there's lots of stuff. Yep. I categorize everything that's a waste of time as stuff. So things come up, you go, they want to paint the coffee room blue and you don't like the idea. Well, they're going to paint it, let them paint it blue. They want to do something that is a challenge to your integrity. You have to be willing to die for that.
Right. Yeah.
You have to look yourself in the mirror. So I had a wonderful client, a fabulous guy, built railway locomotives, really good. One of those very rare people who has an incredible technical competence, but also they're called soft skills, but actually they're very hard skills. But, what's called the soft skills of communication, empathy, all those, who had them both. A wonderful leader. And I hadn't said this, I'd said something similar. But I say that because that comes at just the end of this. He had introduced electric multiple units into Greater Anglia, and they weren't being rolled out. There was always a reason, this whole fleet of trains couldn't be used for this and that. And so he actually came over here for a week. He stayed in Norwich, and he was up in the depot at 4:00 every morning to find out what it was and what had been done and the rest of it. He said to me, you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror in the evening and answer the question, have I done every single thing that I could have done? Mm-hmm. Now, they're his words, not mine, but it's part of this integrity thing.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I don't want to know all the reasons you couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it. Use all the energy for the reasons we can't to just do it. But back to you, because you're asking a very deep question here. So Wittgenstein said, if you want to go really deep, you don't have to travel very far. So this who we are. We're fragile. We're fragile creatures. I'm very good at holding opposing ideas paradox easily. So on one hand, I believe that we were a set of amoeba who got lucky. The water was the right temperature. And on the other, I believe we're divine creatures looking for our place within the cosmos.
Right.
And I have no issue with these entirely opposing views. So our humanity is both our humanity when we are not truly aligned with it is one of our greatest weaknesses. And our humanity when we're truly aligned and coherent and congruent and compassionate and caring, it is our greatest strength and that which differentiates us probably from all other creatures.
Yeah. Yeah. And that congruency and alignment and our ability to sense into that presumably is at the heart of knowing when it's a skirmish and when it's a battle, right? Like,
you must also add in how you turn up. Because if you're turning up fragile, everything's going to look like a battle.
Right.
Yep. If you turn up well, it was a very interesting piece of research. It was right, kind of a bit of a jaw dropper. There was a very interesting piece of research, which was what makes peak performance. Number one, enough sleep, because without that, we are useless. And number two, operating in a pleasant and optimistic environment. And number three, mildly challenging, but mutually agreed deadlines.
Right.
And that combination. So how we turn up, well, our external world is quite simply a manifestation of what's going on inside. And what's going on inside is often created by how we physically feel within our body, what we're eating, whether we're treating ourselves well. So if you turn up and you're holding the world lightly, 99% of it is skirmishes.
Right. Yeah.
If you're turning up fragile, 95% of it is battle.
That's a brilliant insight. Yeah. That's a brilliant insight. Yeah. Yeah. And if there's skirmishes, you can be flexible. You can roll with things and easily, hold on to your integrity and your values without getting, hooked on.
I only did a little bit, but I did a little bit of Milton at school, but not much. But Paradise Lost, Satan's fall from grace was all caused, in Milton's words, his sense of injured merit. So when we have our sense of injured merit, there's a lot of battles out there. There's a lot of things we're unhappy with, and there's a lot of things that aren't right. So much better to turn up well.
Yeah. And you're so right why we started with sleep. Because yeah. It's the number one certainly in my life, it's the number one determinant of whether I'm going to show up like.
But this is back to also my entire philosophy for life. Work with what's working. So when do you find you have your best sleep? We might find that when you eat earlier. I'm not suggesting this is true, but we might find, it's when you eat earlier, when you don't have a coffee after 5 o'clock or something, or you do X or Y, or do you know what? I've got a nice book and I have half an hour with my book before I go to sleep. Whatever it is. Because ultimately, all life is a set of habits. So we might as well pay attention to the habits. I'm using habits as a familiar word. The word I would tend to use is rituals. Because I think when we're paying real attention, there is a higher dimension and order into this. There's something beautiful about ritual.
Yeah, I love that.
It's very symbolic. It's my mum was a healer, amongst other things. She was a very good teacher, and also, but she was a healer, a good thing. She was always a little bit scared of it, scared to do wrong. She always was very respectful of it, and so I had to be persuaded to use it. She first practiced, I remember, on the dog while it was asleep, on the dog's ear, and the ear was, So, but you notice with healers of any kind, they always have a ritual to finish off. And often it's washing hands, but that's not a clinical COVID kind of washing hands. It's a spiritual washing hands. I finished with this. My osteopath, who he's a wonderful man. He's a genius and magician. In a former life, I'm sure he would have been burnt as a witch, because of the work he does. But he is very, very. I know the ritual. When he's finished, he washes his hands, he says goodbye, and he goes to a different room, and he kind of regroups. So he's got one room, which is the room he does treatment in, but many practitioners would use the same room for notes, or he doesn't. This is his sacred space where he does the work and then finishes it and goes. So ritual is beautiful. Ritual. Brushing your teeth should be a ritual.
Yeah, I love that you've emphasized that. Yeah.
There's such joy to be found in it. I've always cooked a bit, but all through COVID, I did cooking, and I did all the cooking. And apart from occasional Charlie Bingham's fish pie, because it's not worth the effort to make something that's good, I cooked everything from scratch. And there's a very interesting company called Natura. And Natura is Italian in origin. And Natura, a lot of the produce is vegetables, fruit and vegetables. A lot of the produce is organic, but that's not their thing. Their thing is right plant, right place, right time of year. So they tend to come from small producers, and the food is beautiful. At the moment, we've got white courgettes, Italian white courgettes. There was the most incredible artichoke. So there was this beautiful thing. I actually took a photograph. It was art compared with the artichokes. And the joy. And often I'll buy whatever in a supermarket from Natura is there, and work out a little dattarini tomatoes, that if you cut them and do them with the very best pasta, just as simple as, just lovely. So we're back to raw ingredients. We're back to how you turn up. We're back to this whole thing that if the components aren't right, if the below the water of the iceberg is not solid and good, the top. Sorry, this is an absolute rubbish description. I think you know what I mean. You've got to have it built on solid foundations.
Yeah,
and the solid foundations are how we are in the body. That's the solidness, because everything is totally connected. So if you imagine it's a triangle, you have emotion, you have language, and you have physiology on the triangle. Now, the triangle always has to add up and be a triangle. So if one side changes, the other side has to change. So in any given situation, change the language, something different will happen. Yes? Change the physiology. So if you look up, it's very difficult to be depressed looking upwards.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying for someone who is going through severe depression that looking up is going to fix it. I'm not being that. But as we go through our day-to-day life, change the physiology. Yeah. Look up. By the way, all the interesting things tend to be on the top of the buildings.
Yes.
Yeah. Look up. We've got a whole generation of looking down.
And you can see the sun.
Oh, and you can see the sun, which is lovely. Now, I'm wrecking your interview, so you should ask me some questions.
I absolutely love this. This is just packed. Now, there's so much gold, as the kids say here. And it makes complete sense that we're tying these things together. The basic fundamentals of your body, your physiology, is the grounding for your ability to have choice around who you're going to be.
That's right.
It's much harder to make choices about who you're going to be when you've had 3 hours sleep and you've been eating junk food for a month, right? That's just going to be much harder.
So everything is a habit. So I am very fond of chocolate, and I gave it up on Boxing Day because it had turned into my go-to for anything during the day, and truly demolishing a bar of chocolate a day. Even if it's the very best, good quality dark chocolate, this is not a good habit. But I have found, and on the back of it, so I haven't had any, even when I was offered the very best chocolate truffles, I said no. Once I got the taste for it, I'll be back on it. So no. But one of the biggest things that can make the two quickest changes, and rather like a financial advisor, I'm not authorized to give any kind of medical dietary advice. But the two things that I've found are, number one, better hydrated, and number two, less sugar will have the quickest, biggest impact.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. But it's so powerful that you've included language in there. Yeah. Language, the thoughts we have. Absolutely. Yeah. Vital, isn't it? Who are we judging? How are we judging them? What are the thoughts we have? What thoughts are we running about ourselves, about everybody else?
So I think one thing for people to think about is, when are they quiet in their heads?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just an open question, because many people, unfortunately, have a lot of self-chatter going on that gets in the way. One of the pleasures of doing this with you, you're very thoughtful, very skilled at this, and you know when to nudge and when to keep quiet. So I'm doing I'm doing very little thinking. Every now and again I think, because I think, but otherwise I'm just answering you in the moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we would want to be heading, to kind of be in the moment and be confident that the right answers. So in sales, they always teach you practice, drill, rehearse, That's fantastic. Then you have to throw it away when you walk into the meeting.
Yeah.
Because you have to be in the meeting, because if you're if they say that, I'm going to say this. Well, it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So heard von Karajan when he was with the Berlin Philharmonic, and core repertoire, Bruckner, Beethoven, Brahms, they'd rehearse a couple of times in the morning. This is music they could have played in their sleep. But you do the practice in the morning so you can play in the evening.
Right.
So David Beckham didn't practice free kicks on Saturday afternoons. You do that on a wet Tuesday at the training ground.
Yeah.
But you can play football on the Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
So we want to have done all this stuff before, our practice, our thinking, our dummy run, some of our questions, all the rest of it. So then we can turn up.
Yeah, I think that's true. But this also reminds me of, I had a podcast guest recently. She's called Byron Katie. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
I know Byron Katie. Yes, she's she's written quite a few books, very thoughtful books.
Yes. But something she had, which I loved, was this concept of, which is one of the things she says, I don't make any decisions anymore. I just allow the thoughts to flow through me. And she didn't use this term, but this is what came to me. It's like you're being thunk. You're not. I'm not thinking. I'm just allowing the thoughts to flow through me, and that makes sense to me when I'm not judging, when I'm not in the ego, when I'm not evaluating, and I'm just allowing the thoughts to come through. It's a more pleasant experience of life.
And I think we have to add in, as you said it, the word that popped into my head was vulnerability. So I think we have to be willing to be vulnerable, because I think that opens up, because I think then we're more willing to play at the edges. If we've decided this is okay, then we don't, keep tight in the middle. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder where that takes us. And then I think in the meeting we're then brave, because I think what happens is we say things like, well, honestly, I know it's irrational, but this is making me feel uncomfortable. I'm curious why. Oh, and then some of the other end they've said, oh, I thought it was just me. And you open this different dialogue. But I think you have to be willing to be vulnerable to appear foolish, or I think you have to be willing to be not with the smart grown-ups, but by the one who doesn't just rubber stamp it, who actually says, doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and that is being oneself. That is being oneself. Back to the quote from Warren Bennis. Yeah,
but that's also being brave, isn't it?
Yeah. The self, the raw self, not the ego trying to protect. But I'm feeling uncomfortable now, or this doesn't seam right to me, or I know everybody else thinks this is the right idea, but right now my intuition is telling me this is the wrong idea.
So one way, just as a practical tip, one way of saying that, which is quite liberating, is it's a bit, and start with the room temperature. Is it only me, or does it feel a bit cool in here? Because nobody can challenge you on how you feel.
Right.
It may be irrational. No, the room's perfect, good temperature, it's you. Are you sure you're all right? But rather than trying to put it on everybody, talk about yourself. So is it only me? But I'm a little concerned that we risk alienating some customers if we do this. Because then you open it, but you allow others as well in, because you're speaking about your experience, which can't be challenged.
Yeah.
No one
you're leading there, demonstrating vulnerability. You're leading with yourself. Is it just
and you're leading with it? Yes.
Yeah. Humility there. Yeah. 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 This is, And I think this is the art of, when we talk about authentic leadership, this really is it. This is that ability to just say what's there for you.
And I guess if we search leadership, 20,000 titles would come up on Amazon or something.
Yeah.
I met Warren Bennis actually on the West Coast. Very, very, very thoughtful man. Very thoughtful man. So since so much has been written, one wonders why. One wonders if it seems, perhaps to people like you and I, although we may not be able to describe the absolute individual qualities, we'll come up with a cluster, but we'll say we know good leadership when we see it or we experience it.
Yeah.
So there's something about, for me, there's something about fairness. There's something about integrity. There's something about listening. There's something about willingness to be brave. I mean, there's a sort of cluster around that.
Yeah. And I think I'd add to that connecting to people, connecting to others. And it helps to be pleasant if you want to do that, as you mentioned earlier. But I also think that covers, because it was interesting. I had an interview recently with brilliant guy from Stanford. He's Jeffrey Pfeffer, and he's like, authentic leadership is bullshit, right? Like you can't expect to be the same person in all of the interactions that you want to with those with whom you want to build relationships in order to build influence and have impact as a leader. And I'm
sorry, from the cheap seats, I'd like to disagree.
Right. Well, I think the way we scare that is we say, well, actually, the aim isn't about whether or not you're the question isn't am I being fake or am I putting a mask on or not? Am I connecting to this person? And if I truly seek to connect to another person, I'm naturally going to find a rhythm and a language that's concordant with that person that allows me to communicate with them. And I'm not really being fake to build a relationship with them. I'm just tuned into them. Right. And so my expression I'm going to dance with them, and my expression is going to be modulated by them. That's the way I see that.
So I saw the first part of the interview, an FT interview, with Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan.
Mm.
And it was Rana Fubar, who's the editor of the FT, started the interview. And they were sitting in his office, all nicely set up. Had this and that and running the words like da 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 da. And he very graciously said, "Oh, Runa, lovely question, but before we start, let me just say welcome. I'm pleased you're here. I've been an FT reader for the last 30 years, and I wouldn't miss a day." And he was just so gracious. Right? And it wasn't put on. He was just gracious. And so it just, this complete imbalance with a woman on a mission with a set of difficult questions and a gracious host. It was just boing. So I'd like to add on, I like it when leaders are gracious.
Yeah.
For all his sins, the man in the White House, actually, when he's not performing, appears quite gracious.
Yeah.
And if you catch the unscripted things, he also sits and, whether it changes his mind or not, I don't know, but he actually listens to people.
Yeah.
One-on-one, you can see the picture, and he sits and listens. And when he was doing the UK trade deal, Mandelson had been asked along. He was told, there's no need to say, you won't be asked anything, just need you here, fine. And so Trump said, Mr. Ambassador, what do you think? And, and I just think that in a world that becomes ever more transactional, a graciousness is lovely. So top tip. Here's a top tip. I know because we spoke before that, and I'm very conscious that we've been on the ethereal side of things. So I want to throw in some top tips as well. So I knew somebody who worked with the greatest private banker of the 20th century. He worked with Edmund Safra. And Edmund had taught him always to take the client out of the building, down to their waiting car or whatever. I thought, that's interesting. Never done that. So we had somebody we were making a big sales pitch to, and the team had done the pitch. I'd been in the meeting and everything, being moderately disruptive and things, and doing all those things they didn't want to do, like ask for the order, And So they kind of finished in reception, and I said, "Oh, no, let me take you down." So on that journey between there and the car, just in conversation, so what do you think? Any good? And oh yeah, it's really. So I learned more in that walk to the car, and made sure yes, where you're going, and and shake hands. It was just lovely, and it was safely handing him from us to his driver and off. So top tip, always take people out of your building on the way out. They'll talk. Number one, it's a high level of courtesy.
Yes.
And number two, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. And it's back to the ritual, right? You're sort of
back to the ritual.
You're ritualistically passing them back to the safety of the car, and you're taking care all the way.
Yeah. You've been in my casa. Now I'm taking you back so you can go to the next one. Yes, I love that. Well, come on then. When we're on the theme of top tips, from your years, both as a banker and then as an executive, as an MD, CEO, and then as a coach, what other tips might you offer people for leadership? So one of the differentiators, this is particularly true. It's generally true. This is very true for the CEO. The ability to hold paradox and it not get you is very useful. A willingness to change your mind on limited information. So I remember we started rolling out a new service, and no one liked it. But we had a trial group of 10,000. We're going to try it with us, and we'd done a few hundred, and everyone hated it. And I said, let's stop this. Oh, but we haven't got all the data in yet. No, but the data we have got in says they don't like it. So let's just stop it, shall we? So an ability to make a decision with limited data. An ability to change your mind and admit you were wrong. I'm dead wrong on this. Dead wrong. We're going to do something different. Might not know what's different, but I'm wrong. So there's that. There's a lovely man who's just died. He was the founding CEO of Visa, whose name will come to me in...
D. Hock, was he?
D. Hock, the great D. Hock. Thank you.
One from many, but what a brilliant book. Yeah.
It's wonderful. So D. Hock talks about hiring people with integrity and ambition. So unless you need a really special skill like brain surgeon, where I don't think ambition and integrity is enough, you can train good people, and good people can learn your industry and things. Yeah. So hire really good people. I've also got a rule. I had a rule. Actually, I gave it. We might get a few tips out of that. I gave a talk years ago, 20 rules of business. Rule number 1, never make your boss look stupid. Rule number 2, always make your boss look good. I forget some of the others. I remember rule 5. Rule 5 was the day you begin to believe your own press handouts is the beginning of the end.
Right.
So, when you're, we are, that's the beginning of the end. I did a lot of work with Lloyd's Bank years ago at the group executive, the CEO group executive committee, and they had these sort of 5 principles, and nearly everybody always forgot them, but they always remembered one, and they remembered it in the breach, and it was a wonderful thing. It was never knowingly let a colleague fail. And I think that's really rather nice. This was another of my 20 rules. It was about meetings. really, you shouldn't be having 1 hour meetings. And the reason you shouldn't be, well, there's multiple reasons. The first basic reason is if you have 2 1 hour meetings back to back, when do you get the bathroom break?
Yes.
Why there isn't a bathroom break thing in the calendar, I just don't understand. Whoever did it, doesn't have to go, I can tell you, because the rest of us mere mortals have to go. So, but it's only scheduled for an hour because it's a nice, easy slot in the calendar.
Yeah.
So really, your meetings with, particularly if they're people who work for you, should either be about 5 minutes or a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Because it's either just want to let you know we're doing this, this, and this, you're still happy with it, or I've got a complicated problem. Have we got time we could explore it, please? Because the rest tend to be just the sake of.
Yeah.
This was also came out of it was a different thing about JP Moore. I'd read an article about him. He gets in early, basically because he lives very expensively, walking distance in New York, but he's driven to the thing, and every single thing is taken care of. But he gets in around 7 and leaves, I think, 6 or 7. So he's long day, full day. But he keeps about 5 hours free so he can talk to his people.
Yeah.
So if you call up and say, I'd like to chat with Jamie, please. One of his, fleet of people looking after his life, say, anytime between 2 and 4, what would you like? So things get dealt with very quickly, very early on. And I was talking to a client about it because it's quite a challenging, different way to think. But it's highly effective, actually, because number one, you speed it up. Number two, you've got this block of space, which is also thinking space and with your people space. He also has an uncanny ability to have a sense of what's going on in the business. Well, you only have that when you are, in many ways, taking the temperature all the time through the people. It's not a once a week, what we've done. It's a permanent, that patient over there is running a little bit warm. That's a bit cool. Heart rate's a bit high over here. So I've talked to 2 clients about it. And in the conversations, it's been very, that's quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of all of the wisdom from Toyota production system and lean manufacturing, the Gemba, right? Well, I guess it's the equivalent of his Gemba in knowledge work, right? There's not a factory floor to be inspected. He can make lots of time for people to come and talk to him.
It's very interesting. I knew, he's dead now. I knew, for those of you who don't know about Toyota and the system, it comes from Deming and Duran, who were the great, they were kind of statisticians as much as anything because they were data. And the US War Department hired Deming and Duran to simplify the construction of submarines. And they managed to reduce it from, I'm making the numbers up, something ridiculous like 9 months to 8 weeks or something just by process. And at the end of the Second World War, the State Department sent Deming to Japan to help rebuild Japanese industry and create a thriving economic model. And I knew this man, and he was New Zealander, Tony Barnes. And he was there basically at the creation of Kaizen, because he was basically Deming's bag carrier and bodyguard. But interestingly, during the Vietnam War, he served as an officer, a New Zealand officer there, and he applied Deming's processes in the Mekong Delta on the boats and reduced injuries and fatalities by sort of 70%, just by applying when does this happen, When doesn't it? At what point does the bullet hit? And all these kind of things. Quite incredible.
Wow. I'd never heard that. I never heard.
Yeah. But this all ties in because there's a whole Kaizen and the Toyota way. Toyota only slipped up. Here we go. Revenge time. Toyota slipped up when they had a goal. And the goal was to be the biggest car maker in the world. And they turned their focus internal rather than their previous focus, which had been external in serving customers with great cars.
Right.
And it took them 2 years to they had recalls where they had, accelerators catching on mats and things, stuff you'd never hear at Toyota. But the whole Toyota philosophy is a wonderful life philosophy because, number one, it's 80-20 rule, which is, 80% of the time we wear 20% of our clothes, everyone knows Pareto principle. So it's that. Plus it's paying attention all the time and asking the question, what works? Let's do more of it.
Yeah.
And it's into the person who's closest to the system knows most about it.
Yeah.
So if your wing mirrors are dropping off, the person to go and talk to is the person on the floor who screws the wing mirrors on.
Yeah.
We're finding a lot of wing mirrors. Oh, I'm not surprised the screws aren't long enough. Oh, thank you very much. So anybody who's really interested, the other thing that goes with it, of course, is lean process. And people think that lean process is about saving money. It's not. Lean process is about removing anything that doesn't add any value to the customer.
Yeah.
So when you're selling a house, you talk to the solicitor, you give them particular information. Oh, thanks very much. I'll get on with that. Who then sends you a stupid letter that arrives 3 days later confirming your conversation. I mean, all that does is, doesn't do anything for me or you. It may do something for somebody, but no. So those whole things all work together. But the philosophy of how to have a happy and, Wittgenstein put it best, how to have a happy and successful life. He didn't say this because I'm translating. Either find a world in which you fit or create a world to suit you.
Yeah.
Anything else is unhappiness. Yep. And what we're talking about match and fit. So the question is this a good, if you're dating, is this person a good match and fit for me? Is this job a good match and fit? It's like gears coming together. If it's too clunky, it probably isn't. But that question, is it a good match and fit? That removes all the emotional stuff.
Mm.
Yep. It's a great question. So you and I talking is a great match and fit.
Yeah.
It's obvious the way we're communicating, the way we're taking ideas. It's a great match and fit. And life should be life. It's a good match and fit. And all the time, just keep asking the question, what's working? When have we done this before? When we did it before, what did we do that was successful?
Yeah.
Try, for some of your listeners, try starting every meeting. Okay, what's gone well this week?
Yeah.
Right? So I often sit with clients and they're telling me woe is me, and and the one question was, this really sounds very tough, but is there anything the business is doing well? And they'll physically move in the chair like this. Actually, the one thing we're doing really well. So, why wouldn't you want to be in that position? We're back to the body again, the embodied experience.
And the language.
Yeah. Which then changes the emotion. Actually, we're really good on this product. We're really competitive. And this one, nobody wants it. Have you ever thought about making more of them then? And I'd like to throw in a Drucker quote. I'd like to throw in 2 Drucker quotes. One Drucker quote is, strategy is not about trying to predict the future. Strategy is about understanding the implications of the decisions you've made today. So I can tell you the day that cost British retail banking pushing £40 billion. Okay?
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand the implications of the decision they were making. So, British retail banking got to the point where they still had a branch manager in every bank, which probably was starting to become too expensive, particularly with a workforce that was more mature, well paid. So there was an idea, why don't we offer some early retirement to some of these older managers, cluster 2 or 3 branches, and put one of our more dynamic managers in charge. Okay, so we do that. Great. Now then, we really want you to start building the business. So we're drifting away already. You can see the drift. We're drifting away from in-service.
Yeah.
Manager knows you, go to talk to manager, into we want you to be competitive, we want you to be profitable, we want you to bring in more business. So these young thrusting managers with their 3 branches start bringing more business in. But then say, this is good, but what we really need to do is we want to have a bonus or a commission for the people on the tills because they're the ones talking to the customers and that would encourage them to sell products. All right, so you can see where this is going. So now we have moved from trusted advisor, cashier who says, oh no, I wouldn't do that. You don't go for the overdraft. It's more expensive. You should go for a loan for this. Yes?
Yeah.
Into a what product can I sell you, which means you end up selling products people don't need, which means you end up with a point where you end up having all the conversation and you spend some time between 35 and 40 billion pounds in the process. All right? So strategy is not predicting this. What are the implications of the decisions we're making?
And sorry, just to so British retail banking was are you talking about British retail banking in general or a particular firm called?
Lloyd's, because they had the biggest number of customers, wrote the biggest check, but everybody wrote them.
Right.
Because everybody sold unnecessary insurance.
Right. Okay. And this was the major scandal about,
PPI, you remember?
Mis-selling.
It's all gone quiet. It's a different thing on the radio ads now. It's about, did you lease a car? I think it is now, or something. It's whatever this one is. So yes,
that's right. Yeah.
So you got to the point that the people, Tesco Bank, the people who sold broccoli to the banking customers was more trusted with their banking than the people who were supposed to be bankers. So yes, but so the question was, do you really think that turning from trusted advisor to salesperson without telling the customers is a smart move? And is there any downside risk?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a failure of strategy to understand the implications of this
Understand the implications of what they were deciding. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other wonderful Drucker quote, which I adore, is today's certainties are tomorrow's absurdities.
Right.
So when I was a young man, on a plane, you could go for the smoking or no smoking section. What? I mean, really? Give all these people matches and starting fires? Really? How mad is that? And by the way, oh no, I want the no smoking. Oh, the smoking's in front of you, so it's all drifting back. It's madness. I said this to a friend in Australia, and he said, we said, when I was a kid, we used to put the baby in the crib on the back parcel shelf of the Holden. How good was that? If we brake sharply, the baby would have been through the front. And secondly, putting it in the Australian midday sun might not have been the smartest thing. So yes. So whatever. Today's certainties are tomorrow's absurdities.
Yeah. And that takes us back to continually asking the question, what's working, and staying connected. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Well, this has been a tour de force. I'm sure we could go on for another. Well, nearly 2 hours, but
this is wonderful. What's your record?
Oh, I think I did 2.5 hours. with a complexity science professor.
Okay. Well, I'll let him have the longest one then. So thinking about wrapping up, why don't we wrap up together? Let me throw a couple of things. Be nice, be decent, be human, be vulnerable, try something different. I was taught as a kid, if you fall over, you stand up and you dust your knees off and you carry on. You know, there's nothing we've talked about if anybody's willing to give it a go is A, going to get them fired, or B, going to get them in big trouble. So, give it a go. Try new things. See what works for you. I think that would be my message. And be human. Be decent. Be human. Show some compassion.
Yeah. Great message. And I love that we're hearing it from somebody who's been extraordinarily successful in business. Right?
Yes. My success, though, was I would put most of it down to, I'd put a solid chunk down to good fortune.
Yeah.
I've always put effort in. And I certainly haven't been ruthless at the expense of others.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very content. Contentment is nice,
Yes.
Content is nice.
Yeah, content in the middle, in the balance.
It's love. All right, you're going to wrap up, but my final parting shot, because you said balance. Richard, so people misunderstand balanced life. They think the balanced life is like on a seesaw, or the Americans call it a teeter-totter. On a seesaw, balance is not in life holding it like this. Sometimes it's Michelin star dialing. Sometimes it's fish and chips in paper. So real balance in life is variety, which gives you the balance. Sometimes this, sometimes that. It's a little bit like nirvana. If the only place you can experience nirvana is going to the foothills of the Himalayas, it's going to be rather tough. You actually have to be able to experience nirvana on a wet Thursday in Sainsbury's, because then you're really in the game.
Yeah. That's some meditation teachers once who used to take people to the middle of the market to meditate. It's like, if you can meditate here, you can.
Excellent.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, there's just so much richness in here. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's wonderful. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure to share. Thank you, and thank you for offering me the space. I felt incredibly comfortable, and I truly enjoyed it. Thank you. It's been, Richard, it's been just such a pleasure, such an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. No. Thank you. And it isn't a word we've used, but the word that comes to me as I say this is love. It's your loving presence that I'm most connected to right now. That's really clear, that you've walked this life in love of others. I've got to experience that. So yeah, thank you. All
Good.
right.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
We will put a description, a link to the book once more. Let's give it a plug. Are you still the future? I didn't read this last time. Learn how to be flexible. We've talked about that. Read the signals in the system and keep yourself relevant for every step on your leadership journey. So we will certainly put the link to the book. You have a website as well. Is that right?
Yes. So one, I'm easy to find. Are You Still the Future is a good title to come up. I'm also easy to find because with a name like mine, Once you've actually got it, it's very searchable. So Piers is Old English for Peter, same root, Peter, Pierre, Pedro. Fallowfield is rotating the crops, wheat one year, barley the next. And Cooper is the barrel makers. So, it's quite easy to find. So anybody who wants to connect or a conversation, I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Brilliant. We'll put that out there as well. Okay. Thanks once again. Been wonderful.
Thank you, Piers. Thank you.